Now, there's not going to be any changes from inside the profession. I've been writing about these issues since the 1980s extensively. I've published, I don't know, 2 or 3 dozen peer-reviewed articles, 20 books, lots of other things. Occasionally a young psychiatrist, very young, comes across my work or on their own realizes that they're being taught hocus pocus and nonsense, fraud. But the vast majority of psychiatrists are stuck. By personality, they're not very nice, or they can't relate. They're authoritarian, they're rigid. Nobody walks in their office and says, "Oh, I feel better just sitting with you, doc." You may do that with a social worker or a psychologist or a minister or your best friend or the bartender, but the odds of you walking into a shrink's office and feeling expanded, really small chance. It's the nature of it's the nature of the people like me who go into the profession. I went in knowing I wanted to reform the profession because I'd started at Harvard in the 50s, working in state mental hospitals. We used to get the backward patients out of the hospital as college volunteers. So I knew what people could do. I went in for a whole different purpose than your average shrink who is, he discovers he can't stand blood in medical school and he can get to control people with drugs and shock treatment. I mean, what kind of person is that? All right, so the profession isn't suited personally to helping people. That's the first problem. Second problem is training. Well, to get to medical school, you start with chemistry and biology and all that stuff in college. You don't have a lot of time for poetry, literature, looking at human values, thinking about personal relationships, and you can be sure you don't end up believing in God or being grateful to be alive on this earth because most of your time's in a lab. So we get trained out of our humanity even if we had a lot to begin with. And then what do we learn? Now as a psychiatrist, you don't learn to do therapy. That's going to be done by the social workers. You see, because psychiatry went broke trying to compete doing therapy with social workers and psychologists because we charge twice as much and we're not as good. So got taken over by the social workers, psychologists, the family therapists. We don't even get trained in it anymore. I was, but I'm 70 years old. The young guys don't get trained in therapy. So how are they going to change? They don't have anything. So the only tool my colleagues have is drugs and shock treatment and an occasional lobotomy. So help me God, we still do occasional lobotomies. In fact, I was the expert in a lawsuit that won $7.5 million from the Cleveland Clinic about 2 years ago for doing a newfangled kind of lobotomy on a patient, ruining her. So it's not going to reform from within because there's no place for it to go. It can't go to human services, to caring, to understanding, to wisdom, to relationship, to therapy and help. The competition from outside of medicine is taking that over. So it's got to constantly retrench, fight against any suggestion the drugs aren't wonderful, let alone that the drugs are doing more harm than good. So what's the solution? The solution comes from outside of psychiatry, from films like this. People have to start to say to themselves, I don't want to take a drug. I always knew I didn't want to take a drug. My mom and dad didn't take drugs. I don't want my kids to have drugs. I'm going to reject this propaganda. I'm going to find some other way to live a happier, fuller, richer